My brother pointed me to a bar stool at his rehearsal dinner, which I was paying for, and told me it was for real family only. He had no idea the $5,000 bill was the least of his problems. I just smiled, ate my meal, and set a trap that would cost him everything. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call came on a Tuesday, the worst Tuesday of my quarter. I was 52 years old, managing a portfolio worth 9 figures, and I couldn't seem to shake a brutal bronchial infection that had settled deep in my chest. Every breath felt like I was inhaling crushed glass. I was propped up in my home office, mainlining hot tea and honey, when my personal phone buzzed with a picture of my brother, Colin. "Susan, hi." His voice was too loud, too bright. It was the voice he used when he wanted something. "Are you busy? Are you dying?" "Both," I coughed, a rattling sound that made my screen flicker. "What's wrong, Colin?" "Nothing's wrong. God, you always assume that. Can't a guy just call his favorite sister to say hi?" "I was his only sister. You need money." "No," he said, offended. "Well, not money exactly. It's about the wedding. Serafina and I, we're a little in over our heads. The rehearsal dinner, the restaurant, they want a deposit we just don't have." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. This was the story of our lives. I was the responsible one, he was the dreamer. I was the financial analyst who built a career on prudence. He was the freelance graphic designer who built a career on, well, mostly on my financial support. Ever since our father died, I had stepped in. I paid for his art school, co-signed his first apartment lease, and quietly covered his car insurance for the last decade. He was my little brother, and I loved him, but he was a 34-year-old sinkhole. "How much, Colin?" "5,000, he said in a rush, as if saying it quickly made it smaller. "It's for the private room at El Ambrasi. Serafina says it's the only place that has the right aesthetic." I choked on my tea. El Ambrasi, the one with the 3-month waitlist. "Yeah, but Serafina knows a guy, so we're in. You just need to call and put your card down. It's just a deposit. We'll, pay you back after the wedding from the gift money." I knew, with the certainty of a stock market crash, that I would never see a penny of that gift money. But he was my brother, and he was getting married. "Fine," I wheezed, my chest aching. "I'll call them. But Colin, this is it. After this, you two are on your own. I mean it. I'm not funding the honeymoon or the down payment on a house." "Of course, we wouldn't dream of it," he chirped, the relief palpable in his voice. "You're the best, Susan. We'll see you there, right? 7 p.m. Friday." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice flat. I hung up and spent the next 10 minutes in a coughing fit so violent I saw spots. I should have taken it as an omen. Fast forward to Friday. My infection had stubbornly refused to leave, but I'd traded my bathrobe for a silk blouse, a tailored blazer, and a small mountain of cold medicine. I felt fragile, my bones aching with fever, but I was determined to be there. I'd even secured the reservation, not through Serafina's guy, but by calling the manager, a client of mine, who was happy to open the reserve room for me. I'd told him I'd be handling the bill. I arrived at El Ambrasi at 7:02 p.m. The restaurant was stunning, all low light and dark wood. The hostess guided me toward the private room, but as I approached, I could see the main table was already full. A long, beautiful oak table, set for 20. Colin and Serafina were at the head, holding hands. Serafina, in a white dress that looked suspiciously like a wedding gown, was laughing loudly. Her mother, Martha, a woman I'd met twice and who looked like she'd been sculpted from ice, sat at the other end. Colin saw me, and his face lit up for half a second before Serafina whispered something in his ear. His smile tightened. He stood up and walked over, intercepting me before I reached the table. "Susan, you made it." He gave me an awkward, one-armed hug, clearly afraid of catching my germs. "I said I would," I rasped, my throat raw. "I'm not feeling great, but I'm here. The room looks lovely." "Yeah, it's great," he said, shifting his weight. He wouldn't meet my eyes. So, look, there's been a little change of plans with the seating. A change of plans. He gestured vaguely toward the packed table. Yeah, Serafina's family. Well, there's more of them than we thought. Her cousins from out of state, you know. And Martha really wanted to keep the families together. I looked at the table. I saw Serafina, I saw Martha, I saw a dozen people I didn't. Recognize, I don't see anywhere to sit, Colin. He cringed, then pointed. Over by the wall, next to the service station where the waiters were polishing cutlery, was a single, tall bar stool. You can sit there, he said, his voice barely a whisper. We've got real family at the main table. I stared at him. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into a dull roar. My lungs, already tight, seized. What did you just say? It's her night, Susan, he pleaded, gesturing to Serafina. We just need to keep her mom happy. It's for family. You get that, right? He had used her word. Real family. And I, the sister who had raised him, the woman paying for every breadstick and bottle of wine in that room, was not included. I looked at the bar stool. Then I looked back at my brother, the man I had sacrificed for, loved, and supported for 34 years. The betrayal was so sudden and so sharp, it hurt more than the infection raging in my chest. The cough I'd been suppressing finally broke free, a dry, hacking sound that echoed in the sudden silence. The fever, the sickness, the exhaustion, it all vanished, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I didn't make a scene. I think that's what they were expecting. I think Serafina, who was now watching me with a smug, anticipatory glint in her eye, was hoping for one. She wanted the story of Susan's dramatic outburst to tell for years. She wanted to paint me as the jealous, overbearing older sister who couldn't handle her brother starting his own life. I would not give her the satisfaction. I simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. I see, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rasp. You're right, it's her night, don't worry about me. Colin's shoulders slumped in relief. Oh, thank God, I knew you'd understand, you're the best. I'll have them send a drink over. He patted my arm, a flimsy, dismissive gesture, and hurried back to the table, to his real family. I walked to the bar stool. It was as uncomfortable as it looked. It wobbled slightly, and my view was of the service station and the swinging kitchen door. I was an afterthought, an ATM machine with a cough. A young waiter approached me, his face a mask of professional pity. Ma'am, can I get you something? Yes, I said, pulling the stool out and settling onto it. I'll have a bottle of the San Pellegrino, and a cup of hot water with lemon and honey, and a menu. A menu, ma'am. Yes, I am after all a guest. He scurried off. From my perch, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of the entire party. It was like watching a play for which I had unwillingly bought all the tickets. Serafina was in her element, her voice cutting across the table. Her mother, Martha, a woman with iron-gray hair and a predatory stillness, watched everything with a smile that never reached her eyes. The drinks were already flowing. I watched as the waiter brought out bottle after bottle of a Premier Cru Chablis that I knew, from my client dinners here, cost $250 a bottle. They weren't just celebrating, they were ransacking. I focused on my hot water, the steam a small comfort. I felt a familiar, internal click. It's the feeling I get before a major market correction, a mental shift from emotion to analysis. I was no longer a sister. I was an auditor. A few minutes later, the waiter brought my appetizer, a simple Caesar salad. As I ate, I tuned into the conversation. The table was loud, emboldened by expensive wine and the thrill of a free ride. And I told him, Serafina was bragging, holding a wine glass aloft, I said, the past is the past. We're our own family now. It's time he set boundaries. Martha nodded, dabbing her lips with a napkin. He's a good boy, Serafina, but a little soft. He needs a strong woman to guide him. It's a good thing you're weeding out the toxic influences. Toxic influences. That was me, the woman who'd paid Colin's rent last month. Oh, absolutely, Serafina laughed, and this part, she said louder, clearly for my benefit. I mean, some people just can't let go. They hold on to the past, thinking it gives them some kind of control. But they're about to find out how little control they really have. She looked right at me as she said it, a triumphant, dismissive smirk. I just took a bite of my salad. My main course arrived, a modest portion of salmon. The main table was on its fourth course. Lobster tails, tomahawk steaks, truffle-infused everything. They were ordering like lottery winners. Colin, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. He kept glancing over at me, his brow furrowed, but Serafina would invariably grab his hand or whisper in his ear, and he would turn back to her, his new North Star. That's when I overheard the part that froze my blood. It was Martha, speaking to the man beside her, Serafina's father. "The house in Bellevue is a teardown," Martha said, her voice low but carrying. "But the land, Seraphin. A's right, we'll need Susan to co-sign on the construction loan. She won't even feel it. We'll just roll it into the newlywed fund we discussed." "She's on board with that?" the father asked. "She will be," Serafina's voice chimed in. She had leaned across the table. "Once Colin is officially off her books, she'll be so grateful she'll pay for anything. Besides, it's the least she can do. She's had him as a dependent for years. It's our turn to get a little of that support." I stopped chewing. It wasn't just a dinner. It wasn't just a slight. This was a plan. This rehearsal was my audition for the role of family bank, and my humiliation was the first step in establishing the new pecking order. They weren't just taking my money for one night, they were planning to bleed me dry for the foreseeable future. I felt the fever breaking, replaced by a glacial calm. They thought I was a pushover. A sad, sick, lonely woman who would pay any price for a seat at the table. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a client at this restaurant, I was the client. And more importantly, I wasn't just an analyst, I was a damn good one. And I had just analyzed my way out of this investment. This wasn't just about Colin. To understand why I didn't just walk out, why I sat there and took it, you have to understand our history. I was 18 when our father died. Colin was only 8. Our mother was a ghost, lost in her own grief, and I became, in effect, his parent. I was the one who taught him to ride a bike. I was the one who sat in the front row of his awful high school plays. When I got my first job out of college, my first real paycheck didn't go to a new car or a down payment on a condo. It went to a new computer for Colin, so he could explore his creativity. My sacrifices were not small, and I never held them over his head. I built my firm from the ground up, working 80-hour weeks. I missed vacations, skipped parties, and postponed my own life, all to ensure he had the launchpad I never did. I paid for his overpriced art degree, funded 3 of his failed design startups, and never once, not once, did I say, "You owe me." I didn't want him to owe me. I just wanted him to be happy. And to maybe, one day, stand on his own 2 feet. Then Serafina arrived. I first met her about a year ago at a casual brunch. She was, I had to admit, stunning. She had the kind of effortless beauty that comes from a lot of very expensive effort. She was an event planner, which, as far as I could tell, meant she attended other people's parties and posted about them online. She was polite at first, gushing even. "Oh, Susan, it is such an honor to meet you. Colin just raves about you, you're his hero." I was wary. Her compliments were too smooth, her gaze too assessing. She didn't look at me. She looked at my watch, my shoes, the car I drove. She was taking inventory. The real conflict began a few months later. Colin's car, the one I was paying the insurance on, broke down. It was a 10-year-old Honda, perfectly reliable. "Susan, it's a disaster," he'd wailed over the phone. "Serafina says it's embarrassing. She says a man of my talents shouldn't be driving a jalopy." "It's a Honda, Colin, not a jalopy." "Serafina says it's bad for my brand." 2 days later, I got an alert from my bank. A credit check. Colin, with his 520 credit score, had tried to lease a brand new Audi. When he was naturally denied, he'd put my name down as a cosigner, without asking. I called him furious, he didn't answer. Serafina did. "Susan, hi," she'd answered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Colin's just so upset right now, you really hurt his feelings." "I hurt his feelings. He committed identity fraud." "That is such a dramatic way of putting it," she'd scoffed. "He was just trying to be the man you always wanted him to be, a professional, but you just want to keep him down, don't you? Keep him as your little project. It must be hard, knowing he's finally choosing a real partner over his. Well, you." That was the first time she'd drawn the battle lines. Me, the project manager, versus her, the real partner. Now, sitting at my bar stool, I saw it all with perfect clarity. This wasn't a romance, it was a hostile takeover. Serafina wasn't just marrying Colin, she was acquiring his only asset, me. I watched her mother, Martha. The apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. Martha was Serafina too. She had a cold, appraising look, and she was currently deep in conversation with a man I assumed was her husband. She gesticulated, pointing toward Colin, then toward herself, then made a writing motion in the air. She was a planner. This whole humiliation was her idea, I was sure, a way to establish dominance. To show me, in no uncertain terms, that my role had changed. I was no longer the matriarch, I was the treasury. Serafina raised her glass for a toast. "To family," she shouted, beaming, "to the ones who show up, who support us, and who know their place." She and Martha locked eyes and smiled. Colin, bless his spineless heart, clapped along, his face flushed with wine. He even glanced at me and gave me a weak, encouraging little wave as if to say, "See? This is fine. Aren't you having fun, all alone by the kitchen?" I raised my glass of San Pellegrino. I was no longer sick. I was no longer tired. I was, in fact, beginning to feel better than I had in a decade. The dinner continued. The bill, I mentally calculated, had to be cresting $8,000. They'd ordered a round of 25-year-old scotch. They'd added caviar to the steaks. This was not a meal, it was a robbery. I ate my salmon. I drank my hot water. And I waited. I watched Serafina preen and posture, I watched Martha count her unhatched chickens, and I watched my brother, my little brother, fade away into the shadow of these two grasping, greedy women. The plan they'd overheard, the construction loan, the newlywed fund, it was all so juvenile. They thought because I was quiet, I was weak. Because I was generous, I was stupid. They had forgotten who I was. They had forgotten what I do for a living. I don't just analyze finances, I dismantle bad investments. And this entire table, this entire, elaborate, expensive farce, was the worst investment of my life. My shift from victim to strategist was as quiet as a key turning in a lock. It happened the moment I heard the word cosign. Co-signing a loan wasn't just a matter of money, it was a legal entanglement, a long-term binding. It was the financial equivalent of a shackle, and they were planning to slap it on me before the wedding cake was even cut. I pulled out my phone, my back to the table. The flimsy excuse of my illness was now my greatest asset. No one bothered the sick woman coughing in the corner. My first text was to my client, Anton Dubois, the manager of El Embrace. "Me, Anton, apologies to text during service. It's Susan, I'm in your reserve room. I'm not feeling well and need to leave, but there seems to be a misunderstanding about the bill. The party at my table believes I am covering it. Me, I am not. The bill belongs to the man at the head of the table, Colin, and his fiancée, Serafina. I will cover my own meal, salmon, salad, sparkling water, which I ordered separately. Please have a waiter bring me that check. The rest is theirs." His reply was almost instant. "Anton, Susan, I am so sorry to hear this. Is everything all right? Of course. I will handle this personally. Do not worry." My second action was more discreet. Under the guise of checking my work email, I opened a private browser tab. I have access to certain professional databases, background checks, credit reports, asset verifications. It's all part of the due diligence I perform when managing a new client's massive wealth. I typed in Serafina last name. The basics popped up first. 31 years old. A string of addresses, all rentals, No assets. A few small-time judgments for unpaid credit cards. But then I saw it. An event planning business, Serafina's Soirees, registered 3 years ago. It had been dissolved. I cross-referenced the business name. A few clicks led me to a series of scathing online reviews, all from furious brides. She took our deposit and vanished. Hired her for our wedding, she booked the wrong venue and then blamed us. A complete fraud. We had to sue her to get our money back. My fingers flew across the screen. I found the court records. 3 small claims judgments against her, all from the past 2 years, all for services not rendered. All unpaid. She wasn't just a bad event planner, she was a serial scammer. Then I typed in Martha last name. This was even more interesting. Martha and her husband had declared bankruptcy 7 years ago. The real estate investor persona was a complete fabrication. They were living in a heavily mortgaged condo, and their only source of income appeared to be a small, rapidly dwindling pension. This wasn't a merger of 2 families. This was a pair of drowning grifters grabbing onto the only available life raft, my brother, and by extension, me. They weren't just planning to use my money, they needed it. Their survival depended on it. This changed everything. This wasn't a petty family squabble. This was fraud. I sat there in the dim light of the service station as a cold, hard rage settled over me. They were using my brother, his insecurity, his lifelong need for approval, as a weapon against me. They had convinced him that to be a man, he had to cast me out. And he was so desperate to finally be the man, he was willing to do it. A new thought struck me, and it was the most painful one of all. Colin was a graphic designer. Serafina's Soirees website, though now defunct, had been surprisingly slick. The logo, the branding, it was all Colin's signature style. He hadn't just been roped in, he was an accomplice. He W. As probably the one designing the brochures for the scams. The waiter returned, this time with a small black folio. He placed it discreetly in front of me. "Your check, ma'am," he whispered. I opened it. Caesar salad, grilled salmon, San Pellegrino, $84.50. I took out my personal Amex, not the corporate card I'd put on file for the deposit. I handed it to him. "Thank you, please be quick." Of course. The main table was oblivious. They were ordering another round of the 25-year-old scotch. Martha was telling a long, boring story, and Serafina was filming it all for her social media, panning her phone across the lavish spread, the laughing faces, the opulent room. She was documenting her triumph. The waiter returned. I signed the slip, adding a generous tip for the poor young man who had been caught in the crossfire. I tucked my card back into my wallet and stood up. The movement was stiff. My body ached from the fever, my head throbbed from the stress, but my spine was made of steel. I was no longer just leaving. I was executing an exit. I didn't walk to the exit, I walked back toward the table. The laughter died down as they saw me approach. 20 faces turned to look at me, the outcast at the feast. Serafina's smile faltered, replaced by a look of wary annoyance. Colin just looked terrified, like a child who had been caught drawing on the walls. "Susan," he said, his voice small, Are you leaving? You're not feeling well, right?" "I'm feeling much better, actually," I said. My voice was clear, the raspiness from my infection completely gone. It was amazing how adrenaline could clear the sinuses. I looked past him, directly at Serafina. "I just wanted to thank you, Serafina, for this educational evening." She narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've taught me a valuable lesson." I smiled, a tight, thin smile that didn't touch my eyes. "You've taught me all about real family and boundaries. It's been incredibly illuminating." "Well, I'm glad someone finally got the message," Martha interjected, her voice like gravel. "It's about time." "Oh, the message is received, loud and clear." I kept my gaze locked on Serafina. "For example, I just learned what a brilliant event planner you are. I was so impressed, I did a little research. Serafina's Soirees, right?" The color drained from Serafina's face. She shot a panicked look at her mother. What are you talking about?" she stammered. The Millers, the Chengs, the Rodriguez family, they all left such glowing reviews. Services not rendered. Vanished with the deposit. You're not just an event planner, Serafina. You're a portfolio of small claims judgments. A very, very bad investment. A fork clattered onto a plate. The entire table was silent. You bitch," Serafina hissed, her mask of sophistication crumbling. "You have no right." "I have every right," I cut her off, my voice sharp. "I was just about to become your primary investor. You and your mother, with her real estate portfolio that evaporated in a 2017 bankruptcy. You were planning on a construction loan, weren't you? With me as co-signer? You think I'm running a charity for common grifters." "How dare you?" Martha shrieked, standing up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. "We are a respected family." "You're a family of debtors, Martha. And you," I turned to Colin, my heart, despite everything, breaking just a little, "you're the bait, the logo designer for her scams, the excuse to get to my wallet." Colin looked like I'd slapped him. "Susan, she's not." "She's not what, Colin? A fraud? Because the court records say otherwise. Or did you know? Did you know you were bringing a con artist into our family, expecting me to pay for her?" "Stop it," Serafina screamed. She was on her feet now. "You're just jealous. You're a dried-up, bitter old woman, and you're angry that he's finally choosing me. He doesn't need you anymore. We don't need you." "Is that so?" I asked calmly. This was the moment. The entire room was holding its breath. From the doorway, Antoine, the manager, emerged. He was not alone. He was holding a leather-bound bill folder, and he was flanked by two rather large security guards who were, until a moment ago, posted at the restaurant's main entrance. Antoine walked with purpose, not to me, but to the head of the table. He stopped right between Serafina and Colin. "Excuse me, Mr. Colin," Antoine said, his voice polite but ironclad. "Ms. Serafina, there seems to be a misunderstanding regarding payment." Serafina laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "What misunderstanding? She's paying." She pointed at me, her finger trembling. "The bitter old woman by the bar, she's covering it all." I just shook my head, a small, sad gesture. Antoine didn't even look at me. "I'm afraid that's incorrect, madam. Ms. Susan has already settled her personal bill. She was our guest." He placed the thick folder on the table right in front of Colin. "This," he said, tapping it, "is yours." "What?" Colin's voice was a squeak. "This is ridiculous." Serafina lunged for the bill, ripping it open. Her eyes scanned the total. I saw the exact moment her brain processed the number. The blood rushed from her face, leaving her a pasty, sickly white. 10,000, she whispered, her voice cracking. $10,481. "That's with the 20% service fee already included," Antoine said helpfully. "We accept all major credit cards, or cash." But, Serafina looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate fear. She promised, she put down the deposit, she promised 5,000. "And I did," I said, my voice soft. "I called this afternoon and canceled that deposit. I told the restaurant you'd be handling the finances yourselves. You know, like a real family." The silence that followed was a physical weight. It was broken by Martha. "This is an outrage," she yelled, pointing at me. "She agreed to this. She tricked us. Call the police." Antoine, the manager, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I would advise against that. Ms. Susan has already paid her check. You and your party, however, have consumed over $10,000 worth of food and beverages. The police, I assure you, will be on my side. Now, how will you be paying?" Serafina turned on Colin, her expression no longer fearful but reptilian. "Colin, do something. Use her card, the one you have for emergencies." Colin flinched. I don't." She changed the numbers. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Susan, please, don't do this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I put you at the bar. Just pay it. We'll pay you back, I promise." "Like you promised to pay me back for art school." I asked, my voice flat. Or the car insurance? Or your last 3 months of rent? Or the legal fees for Serafina's soirees? At the mention of the legal fees, Colin's face went white. He hadn't known I'd found that part. You knew, he whispered. I know everything, Colin. I know she's a con artist. I know her mother is bankrupt. And I know they've been using you to get to me. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear it. I just didn't know you were in on it. How many wrong venues did you design logos for? His gaze dropped. The shame radiating off him was so thick I could almost taste it. He had known, maybe not all of it, but enough. This isn't happening, Serafina muttered, her hands shaking. She was pacing now, a caged animal. This is my night, you ruined it. No, dear, Martha said, her voice a low growl. She rounded on Serafina's father, a quiet man who hadn't said 2 words all night. Frank, your card, give it to them. Frank looked like a deer in the headlights. Martha, I can't, the Amex it's near its limit. This is more than our mortgage. Then use the Visa. That is the Visa, he squeaked. This was the final, pathetic reveal. The real family at the table, the ones who had been sneering at me, were a house of cards. They were just as broke, just as desperate as Serafina. They had all come here tonight expecting a free ride on my back. Well, somebody better pay, Serafina shrieked, her voice echoing through the restaurant. The main dining room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Anton gestured to his security team. Gentlemen. The 2 large men stepped forward, effectively blocking the exit. You can't keep us here, Serafina cried. We are not keeping you, madam. We are simply awaiting payment for services rendered, Anton said calmly. He looked at the other guests at the table, Serafina's real family. Perhaps you'd all like to contribute. A frantic rummaging of purses and wallets began. A cousin threw down a 20, an uncle a 50. It was like trying to pay for a mansion with pocket lint. They were nowhere close. Susan, Colin said again. His voice was broken. He was crying now, fat, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. Susie, please, I'll do anything. I'll leave her, right now, just fix this. And there it was, the final, desperate, manipulative play. Save me, Susie, be the mom I need. For a second, the old instinct flared. The desire to protect him, to clean up his mess, to shield him from the world. Then I looked at Serafina, who was staring at Colin with pure, unadulterated hatred. I looked at Martha, who was already inching her way toward the coat check, clearly contemplating a run for it. No, Colin, I said, and my voice was kind but firm, the kindness of a surgeon before a necessary amputation. I can't fix this. This one you have to feel. I turned to Anton. Anton, thank you for a memorable evening. My compliments to the chef. The salmon was perfect. It was a pleasure to serve. You, Miss Susan, he said, bowing slightly. I looked back at the table. At my brother, a weeping, broken man. At his fiancée, a cornered, rabid animal. At her family, a chorus of pathetic frauds. Actually, I said, tapping my chin as if a thought had just occurred to me. I just remembered, the deposit. Serafina's head snapped up. Yes, the deposit, the 5,000, you paid it. No, I said. I didn't, but you, Serafina, you're an event planner, you must know the rules. I smiled. El Ambracy has a very strict cancellation policy. When I canceled the $5,000 deposit this afternoon, I forfeited it. That money is non-refundable. It's already been applied to the restaurant's losses for the night. I turned back to Anton. So that $10,481 bill. It's really only $5,481, isn't it? Anton's expression didn't flicker, but I saw the ghost of a smile. That is correct, Miss Susan. Your cancellation fee has been applied. I gave him a nod. He had understood my play perfectly. The restaurant was never going to be out the money. I had covered the first $500, just not for them. So, I said, beaming at the table, it's only half as bad as you thought, see. I'm helping. I turned, my blazer swirling, and walked out of the room. The last sound I heard before the door shut was Serafina letting out a wail that could curdle milk, followed by Martha yelling, "Don't you look at me, Frank." I didn't go home, I couldn't. The adrenaline was pounding in my veins, and the fever had finally definitively broken. I felt light, airy, and powerful. I walked the 2 blocks to my office, a sleek glass and steel building that I owned, and let myself in. I went to my top-floor office, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I poured myself a glass of water, not Chablis, and sat in my chair. The city lights twinkled below, a sea of possibilities. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. It was Colin. I watched the screen, his picture flashing. Colin, 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 27 missed calls. Then the text started. Colin, Susan, pick up. Colin, they're holding us here. Colin, Serafina's dad had to call his brother for a loan. They're all yelling. Martha hit Frank, this is a nightmare. Colin, she left. Serafina just left, she walked out. She said good luck and just left me here with her parents and the bill. Colin, Susie please, I'm at the police station. That one made me sit up. Police station. Me, what police station? Colin, downtown. Frank's card was declined, they had no way to pay. Anton called the police. They're calling it defrauding an innkeeper. Serafina's parents are in a holding cell, I'm just a witness. I think, Susie please, come get me, I'm scared. My brother, my stupid, weak, manipulative, and utterly broken brother. I sat there for a full 10 minutes. I could leave him there. I could let him spend the night in a hard plastic chair, learning the most valuable lesson of his life. It was what he deserved. But he was still my brother. I sighed, picked up my purse, and went to get him. The police station was a sterile, fluorescent-lit hell. Colin was sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. He was wearing a $2,000 suit I'd bought him, and he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. When he saw me, he burst into fresh tears and ran to me, wrapping his arms around me like he was 8 years old again. Susie, I'm so sorry, he sobbed into my blazer. I'm so sorry. I didn't hug him back, I just stood there, my hands at my sides. Are you sorry, Colin, or are you just sorry you got caught? I'm sorry, he insisted, pulling back. His face was a mess of tears and snot. She got in my head, she and Martha. They told me you were trying to control me, that you saw me as a burden, that the only way to be a man was to put you in your place. And the barstool, was that their idea too? He flinched. It was Serafina's, she said. She said we had to show you that your money didn't buy you a seat at the real table, that her family was my family now. I didn't want to, but she said if I didn't, she'd know I was still your little boy and she wouldn't marry me. So you chose her. He couldn't say it. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice tired. They're holding Martha and Frank, I'm not bailing them out. You're listed as a witness, you are free to go. I turned and started walking toward the exit. Wait, where are you going? He cried, scrambling after me. Can I come home with you? I stopped at the glass doors and looked at him. Home? You mean my apartment? Yeah, just for tonight. I can't go back to our place. Her stuff is there, and I don't have my keys. You are 34 years old, Colin. You are a grown man, you made your choice. You wanted your real family. But she left me, you heard me, she left me with the bill. Yes, she did, and now you have to figure it out. Ushed opened the door. The night air was cold and clean. Susan, wait, he begged, following me onto the sidewalk. You can't just leave me here. I have nothing. I have nowhere to go. You're my sister. I am, I said, turning to face him under the harsh yellow light of a street lamp. And as your sister, I've given you everything. My money, my time, my emotional energy. I've been your safety net for 26 years. And tonight, you and your fiancé tried to cut it, not realizing I was the one holding it. I hailed a cab. It pulled up to the curb, its available light a beacon. What am I supposed to do? He whispered, desperation in his eyes. I opened the cab door. I don't know, Colin. For the first time in your life, that is entirely up to you. I got in the car. As it pulled away, I saw him in the rearview mirror, a solitary, expensive-suited figure, alone on the pavement in front of a police station. For the first time in his life, he was truly, completely on his own. I slept for 12 straight hours. When I woke up, my fever was gone, my lungs were clear, and my phone was silent. The barrage of texts and calls had stopped. The silence was, in a word, peaceful. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of productive bliss. I landed a new, massive account for my firm. I went to the gym. I read 3 books. I did not, for 1 second, check up on Colin. I had my lawyers send a cease and desist to Serafina and Martha, just as a precaution, referencing the small claims judgments and the word extortion. I never heard from them again. The wedding, obviously, did not happen. About a month after the rehearsal dinner, my receptionist buzzed me. "Ms. Susan, there's a Mr. Colin here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." "Send him in," I said, not missing a beat in the email I was typing. He walked in. He was different. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by simple jeans and a flannel shirt. His hair was messy, but his eyes were clear. "Hi," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Hi, Colin, what can I do for you?" I didn't get up. I didn't offer him a seat. I just wanted to." He swallowed, and it looked painful. "I'm working, a real job, at a coffee shop, as a barista." "That's nice." "It's humbling," he admitted, "and I'm in a program, a 12-step program for love addiction, I guess, and codependency." "That sounds healthy." "I'm also paying back the restaurant," he said, talking faster now. "And the manager, he was actually really cool about it. He knew you. He said you were a woman of principle. He let me set up a payment plan. I work my barista job from 6 to 2, and then I work as a busboy at El Ambrasi from 5 to midnight. I'm paying off the $5,481. I finally looked up from my computer. He was telling the truth. I could see it in his face. The exhaustion was real. The calluses on his hands were new. "That's impressive, Colin. And," he said, taking a deep breath, "I wanted to give you this." He walked forward and placed a small, crumpled envelope on my desk. It was a cashier's check for $84.50. "It's for the salmon," he said, his voice thick. "And the salad, I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it's a start." He looked at me, his eyes full of a remorse so deep it was bottomless. "I didn't just let them disrespect you, Susie. I participated because I was weak and selfish. And I was so angry that you were successful and I wasn't. I let them use my jealousy to hurt you. And I will never, ever forgive myself for that. But I'm trying to be a better man, the man you always tried to raise." I looked at the check. I looked at my brother, the 34-year-old barista, the 34-year-old busboy. I stood up. I walked around my desk. He flinched, as if he expected me to yell. I picked up the check, tore it in half, and dropped it in my wastebasket. "You don't owe me for the salmon, Colin." He looked confused. "But you do, however," I said, "owe me about a decade's worth of car insurance premiums. But we can set up a payment plan for that." A slow smile spread across his face. A real one, not the bright, fake one he used when he wanted something. "Yeah," he said, wiping his eye. "Yeah, I'd like that." I pointed to the chair opposite my desk. "Sit down, little brother," I said, my voice softer, "and tell me all about the 12 steps." He sat, and for the first time in our lives, he wasn't my burden and I wasn't his bank. We were just family, real family.